Okay, so I have to start this one out with a warning. Once again, this is one of those topics where if I don't say that this could change by the time the video gets publicized, by the time I press public on YouTube, everything could be changed. If I don't say that, I could be screwing myself up, because just in case one of the players we talk about signs a deal with a different team in the National Hockey League, or if the other player we talk about signs an extension, or if he gets traded elsewhere, then this video would be pointless. But today we are talking about the Detroit Red Wings, and two players that are discussed as potential Red Wings targets on Ansar Khan's recent Red Wings mailbag from last week. Let's talk today about former Wing and current UFA Tomas Tatar, as well as Toronto Maple Leafs forward William Nylander. Now, the idea of William Nylander getting traded to another team has been sort of the tour nowadays. Like, this idea is touring around to all these different cities. We're talking about Montreal, we're talking about Detroit, we're talking about New York, we're talking about all these teams that could potentially offer a Nylander package, but we're also talking today about Tomas Tatar, as he is a free agent that at the time of recording this audio has not signed anywhere else, and if the Wings wanted to bring him in, that'd be pretty cool too. So our source today is Ansar Khan's Red Wings mailbag, How Will the Defense Sort Itself Out, from September 1st, 2023. Link will be in the description if you want to go ahead and read this article yourself. But if you scroll down to the middle to bottom part of the piece, let's take a look at some of the questions that are brought in regarding these two forwards. So, firstly, you have yourselves the conversation about Tomas Tatar. Take a look at this comment right here, or not comment, but this question made by Tyler. Though it's likely that Yzerman is done making moves, could we see a possible reunion with current UFA Tomas Tatar? It seems doubtful that the Devils are going to end up with the cap space to sign him, and with a 20-goal season last year, he would complement any team's second or third lines. Now, just before we look at the answer here, Tomas Tatar is 32 years old, as we know, 5'10", 172, not the biggest guy in the world, left-handed shot who plays on both wings. Initially a Red Wing draftee back in 2009, he was a very good Red Wing, and I don't think anybody's going to go out there and complain about Tatar. Multiple 20-goal years, he was always a stud, he got traded to Vegas for a first, a second, and a third, and believe me, I love myself some Tomas Tatar, but a first, a second, and a third is a little bit too much, I feel, for the magnitude of play that he brings. Either way, he was a Golden Knight. He wasn't really that good of a Golden Knight. He got traded to Montreal, had back-to-back 50, 60-point years, and was a point-per-game stud when the team entered the 2020 bubble. Either way, though, his days in Montreal came to an end when he found himself a contract with the New Jersey Devils and eventually posted up 2 straight 30-point seasons over there. This previous year, 20 goals, 28 assists in a full 82-game sample, so the longevity is back here. Unfortunately, Tatar only had 1 goal in 12 games played in the playoffs, but still, there is a very good player here, and I think a lot of people can recognize that Tatar still has talent. Now, why he doesn't have a contract at the moment, that remains to be seen. I think a lot of teams just kind of are pretty shelled out for cap, and Tomas Tatar is definitely not going to be too cheap, not going to be too expensive either, sort of in that mid-tier territory, so if there's any team that's going to go out there and give him a deal, it's probably going to be a little bit too beefy for some of these teams that are strapped up right up to the cap. This is what Ansar Khan says about the idea of Tomas Tatar. They have 1 available roster spot and the cap space, so it can't be ruled out. But if Yzerman acquires another player, he might prefer someone who could play center and wing. Assuming they keep Rasmussen on the wing, their 4 centers are Larkin, Kopp, Comfer, and Veleno. If one is injured, they would either need to move back Rasmussen to the wing or bring up Austin Czarnik unless Marco Kasper appears NHL ready at that time and they're comfortable playing him at center at a young age. I think they're comfortable with the number of top 3 line wingers they have in DeBrincat, Raymond, Perron, Fabry, Sprong, Berggren, and Kostan, with Elmer Soderblom waiting in the wings in Grand Rapids. The idea here is that they might not have enough room to really capitalize on what Tatar brings. Now sure, the theory of just kind of maxing out all your lines with good players is applicable here. Hey, why not just get Tatar? He's another good winger. If you have enough space to get a winger that's pretty good, why not use it? And that's an okay idea, it's just, is this really the type of move the Wings would prioritize when you think of whom the Wings already have in their system, what kind of prospects are there, what kind of players exist in bottom line roles? You don't want to pay a guy like Tomas Tatar a pretty okay salary only to stick him on the 4th line. You probably want to at least give him some chops in the top 6 because he's shown that he can actually play there. And so if the wings are already kind of maxed out there, DeBrincat, Raymond, Perron, Fabry, Sprong, Berggren, Kostan, there isn't really much room here, and as a result, it doesn't really feel like an appropriate add, even if the wings would have the cap space to do it. It's interesting, though, right? I think a lot of fans could say that Tomas Tatar was sort of a fan favorite, and if they brought him back, it would be a pretty nice reunion, all things considered. He's not the best guy in the world, but certainly a good player. And for me, who's also a Montreal fan, seeing Tatar get 61 points in 68 games played in the 2019-20 year, that was already incredible. Like a near point-per-game year out of a guy that was a throw-in in the Max Pacioretty-Nick Suzuki trade, pretty much. So there's a good player here. Does he go to the wings? Who really knows? They have the space to do it, but at the moment it does not seem like this would be a good possibility. Then if you go over to the bottom of this same article in MLive, Reader Jim goes out there and asks this: do you feel there is any possibility the Wings could work towards acquiring Toronto's William Nylander? Ansar Khan replies this: it is doubtful. They could always use more offense, but they no longer have the urgency to acquire a sniper after trading for DeBrincat. If Toronto opts to move Nylander, who will be unrestricted after this season, they'll probably have more options, particularly outside the Atlantic Division, than Ottawa did with DeBrincat. DeBrincat made it clear he would sign an extension only with a handful of teams, and Detroit being his preferred destination. Plus, the Wings wouldn't relinquish the assets it would take to get Nylander unless he agreed to an extension, and there's no reason for him to do that. And so, long story short, with Nylander, this doesn't seem like an appropriate option too. And this one makes a lot less sense than the Tomas Tatar idea we had just talked about as well, mostly because for William Nylander, I mean, if the guy wants to get absolutely paid, there's no reason for him to do that in Detroit. This is not really a team that's poised to being able to give out big money bucks to any more guys. There were already big dollar contracts given out to Kopp, Compher. These guys are at $5 million plus each. Of course, you have DeBrincat at near 8. Larkin is at 8.7. If you take a look at the cap space the Wings have next summer, they've got about $30 million in cap space, but they need to re-sign a handful of guys. Raymond needs a contract, so does Veleno, Berggren, not to mention Moritz Seider and Michael Rasmussen. Sure, there are older guys on the team that need deals, like James Reimer needs a deal, David Perron needs a deal. You could say Sprong and Fisher are there, but they're 26 years old, so they're not too old, but there is some money that's going to need to be shelled out. And if you wanted to do the math, okay, you could say, let's say best case scenario, Seider signs an $8 million deal, Raymond signs a $7 million deal. If you do the math, there still is some money left over, but there's not much. And William Nylander would probably go out there and demand a substantial amount that wouldn't really align much with the Red Wings' ability to give in 24-25. So overall, this doesn't really make sense financially, especially when it comes to what Nylander has preferred most so. When it comes to these negotiations, he wants that big money deal because none of his other teammates are taking pay cuts either, which is sort of indicative as to why he shouldn't. But also, when it comes to just the spots and the players who are already on this team, Ansar Khan mentions it pretty nicely here that because the Wings already got DeBrincat, they don't really need to go after Nylander. It's an interesting idea, but it doesn't really make too much sense. DeBrincat had all the factors aligning with Detroit, which is why things were able to happen here. But for William Nylander, if he goes on the market, it doesn't really seem like he has a preferred destination, and it doesn't seem like that would be Detroit. DeBrincat had that, so it's a little bit different here. So at the end of the day, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What are your opinions about the ideas of the Wings getting Tomas Tatar as well as William Nylander? Not together, of course, maybe separately, but circumstantially. Do you agree with these ideas that it wouldn't really work out based off of who the Wings have and what they're going to pay guys in the future? Do you think this works out if you're a Maple Leafs fan and you're thinking about Nylander getting traded to Detroit? What is it from the Wings that you would want in return for Nylander in a trade? And of course, if you're a Wings fan, what would you feel comfortable giving up to Toronto if this trade were to happen? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.